Welcome back to another edition of the Writ to Rising podcast. I am your host, Christine Hummel, and today I have another special guest with me, Michelle Rosar, who will talk a little bit about her personal and professional journey. As a reminder, this podcast is created as a platform for women to hear other people's stories and experiences to gain knowledge and confidence to find their true purpose. So Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Michelle Rosar joins us today. Her official title is Head of Partnership Marketing at the San Francisco 49ers. And I love, Michelle, for you to tell us a little bit about yourself personally and professionally.
Yeah, so I'm currently a sport business executive. I've been working in the sports world and working specifically in sponsorship for about, I think it's almost close to 15 years now, which is kind of crazy. I oversee the partnership marketing team here in San Francisco for the 49ers, and that is definitely the professional side of me. I would say the personal side of me, which kind of all blends together. I love getting to know people in an authentic way. I think finding what makes people tick, learning, what makes them unique and what is interesting to them, building relationships, figuring out, how I can best service the people around me is definitely a big part of not only my job, but also my personal life.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit before we jump to how you got to your current role. When you were, high school and college age, what did you want to do? Like, what did you have your dream job to be? Did you have one? What were you interested in? And how did you kind of build that journey between high school and college?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy journey because I definitely did not know I wanted to work in sports when I was in high school. I thought I was going to be a psychologist. I
Oh,
actually was in like AP psychology when I was in my senior year of high school. I got into University of Central Florida for psychology, and last second I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. So my mom recommended that I go undeclared at Temple University since it was a local, state college, and try something, different, test out the waters. And I randomly took a intro to sport management class, which I didn't even know existed. And I absolutely fell in love. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm probably the most unathletic human being there is. So the fact that you could work in sports and not actually have to play sports was just so appealing and cool to me. So I started, I think like my first time I decided to do something related to sports, I just walked into the football office at Temple University and was like, I will do anything. I don't even need to do an internship. I'll volunteer. I'll clean up your desk, like whatever you need me to do. And the head of communications at the time was like, absolutely, we'd love to have you on. Like, you seem like a go-getter. And next thing you know, I started interning in communications for Temple football. Then I worked in Temple basketball. And then at that point, I was hooked. So I declared my major in sports
wow.
management and just absolutely fell in love. We got to do internships with the Philadelphia 76ers and the Philadelphia Flyers. And it was such a cool moment where I realized like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I didn't know exactly what in sports I wanted to do at that time, but it was really cool because I started understanding like this is the industry that I want to work in.
So go back a little bit to wanting to be in a psychology major, and then also you wanted to go to Florida, which is pretty far from Philadelphia. So maybe walk us through why you wanted to achieve those two goals about going further away when you were in college and then also focusing on psychology.
Yeah, I think and to this day it's actually kind of interesting because I think I use psychology in my work
Yeah.
every single day. The art of understanding people and what makes
Yep.
them behave certain ways. I use a lot of psychology methods when it comes to my team actually and how people work
Mm.
together and how people communicate and repetitive behaviors and ways in which you can get people to respond a certain way is actually pretty
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. So I loved that aspect, and once again it kind of bled into my what I ended up doing anyway. And then going far away, my sister went to college in Florida, and I just thought it was really
Okay.
cool that she got away. My brother went to Temple University, which is obviously where I ended up going, but it was really cool to see her branch out, do something completely different, move away from home, meet a new group of friends and people, and surround herself with a new community. So I still absolutely admire everything that she did, which probably makes sense why I just moved to California a couple of years ago. But it was really cool to see, and it was something that I wanted to do. It's just not at the moment what I was meant to do.
Right. That's interesting how that pivot happens. So when you walked into the, it sounds like you're making it really easy. You just walked in and told them, in the sports department that you wanted to do anything, didn't even to get paid for it. It sounds pretty easy just to walk in and ask someone, to hire you or to have you shadow or internship. How hard was that? And do you think that what you experienced, a few years back, a couple decades back, is different now than a younger woman walking into that same college department, that same sports department, and asking them to take a risk and, asking for that internship or that volunteer work?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It was actually horrifying. I remember shaking. I weirdly remember exactly what I was wearing because I remember when I was walking into the office and I asked if the woman who I was looking to see was available. I was looking at my outfit and I was looking at all these other professionals and they were all dressed in suits and, business outfits. And I was sitting there like in definitely not an appropriate work attire outfit, being like, what am I doing here? Like, why did I come? But in that moment, I realized I need to make steps further. Like, I need to move forward in my life. And it was something I was really interested in. The person who I ended up seeing, I was recommended to by one of the head of the sport management department. So they gave her a little notion that I was going to be
Yep.
coming in. So I really did my due diligence, though. I studied, I learned exactly what they do there and did my research before I walked in so that I could speak intelligently, even though I wasn't dressed maybe the way that I knew I needed to for this industry. So I slowly started to learn at that moment that you just got to put yourself out there and you got to take risks because if I wouldn't have walked into that office and started all of those slew of
Yep.
roles within the sports industry, I probably wouldn't be where I am today.
Do you think that younger generation women that are in college can do the same thing today that you did? And do you think they would still be differentiated, doing the research and having the recommendation? And the reason I ask this is it's just so competitive out there. It's like everyone is doing everything, the experiences, the internships. So do you think that reaching out and going to that department and doing the same tactics you did a few years back is the same as the impact it would have today?
Absolutely. Honestly, I think if anything, it would have more of an impact. I am constantly being reached out to by young professionals
Mm,
who are looking to get connected. And don't get me wrong, there are times where I get really busy and I don't have the opportunity
yep.
to connect with them. But sometimes it's the handwritten letters. It's still that like extra effort that you don't see because unfortunately, social media and
Mm,
the internet and AI makes it really hard to differentiate between like who
mm,
is using a robot to kind of control what they're saying versus when you actually get an opportunity to meet someone in person. So, if anyone reaches out and says, I'd love to shadow, or if there's an opportunity to meet in person, I would take that opportunity probably any day over any other type of call, obviously,
mm.
unless they're really far away from me, because I think that personal connection is like by far the best thing that you could
I
possibly do.
agree.
You also understand people mannerisms, you understand their personality better. So I think any opportunity to actually just get out there and meet someone in person is going to be your best bet.
That's great advice, especially as, AI and social media keep ramping up. And that's important to differentiate yourself personally. So let's walk through a little bit then. You went to college, you figured out sports management was for you. So then you kind of were all in at that moment. So maybe walk through a little bit, how you graduated, all the different preparation that you had. And then when you graduated, what was it like to try to find your first job?
Yeah, so in college it was a crazy time because at that point in time, we were struggling a little bit financially, so I knew I had to kind of pick up extra hours and work a little bit harder in order to get where I wanted. And my mom, who's like the most incredible woman in the world, was insanely supportive of what I wanted to do. But she also knew that, working in sports, the starting salary was going to be way less than any other industry that I wanted to
Hmm.
get into when it comes to the business world, at least. And so I knew I had to work extra hard. I knew I was like walking into a male dominated industry. So I ended up working, all internships were unpaid at the time. So I worked a lot of
Wow.
unpaid internships. And then in my spare time, when I wasn't interning, I was working full time jobs or part time jobs technically in order to make sure I could go to class, make money, and then do my internship. But all of my part time jobs, internships were all in sports. So that's when I was with the
Awesome.
Philadelphia Flyers, the 76ers. I did fan photography. I did 50/50 raffles. Like I was doing like I was a hostess at the Cadillac Grill in the Wells Fargo Center at the time, which was where the 76ers played. So it was really cool. Like I was immersing myself into
Yep.
all of these unique opportunities. And crazy enough, like every role I was in, I took advantage of the fact that I had a voice in that role. I made friends. I connected with people in the stadium, and that job led to my next job. And then I made a good impression, and that job led to my next job. So I realized that no matter how small the role was that I was in, it continued to make an impact in my personal brand and how people saw me. So that was really unique. And when I graduated, it's like, I can't wait to dive into professional sports. I've been working really hard, but of course, there was no job available when I first graduated. But an agency that I was working for, who also worked within the sports world, asked if I could come on as their summer intern. And I was like, no, I don't want to do an internship. I want to work full
Yeah.
time. I graduated. And they're like, if you crush it in this role, we are going to be hiring for a coordinator at the end of the year. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll try it. So I ended up doing that. Ended up literally like mascotting on the side. Like I literally put on a mascot costume as a brand ambassador and made a lot of money doing that while also interning throughout the summer. Ended up
Wow.
being the best experience of my life because I learned a whole nother world of the sports industry, which was working on the agency side.
Mm,
And I learned to negotiate. I learned every facet of the sports industry. When you work for an agency, you're kind of a little bit of everything and everyone. So I worked in public relations, communications, community events. I planned major events, and I ended up negotiating sports contracts all up and down the East Coast. So it was really cool. I got to work with the Ravens, the Capitals, the Wizards, minor league
awesome.
teams. My whole world was opened up all because I said yes to an opportunity that was presented in front of me that maybe wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And I'm so grateful every day that I did that because that's when I learned like this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
So I think two things are important that what you're saying is you immersed yourself in something. You knew like the area you wanted to be in. And you tried to do anything and everything that came your way, even if you couldn't get to that end result, right? So then the second thing you did is you tried to build your network and you build to let people to get to know you and knew you were a hard worker and that you'd be a great, employee. So I think more and more that women can hear that, especially graduating, is just because you don't get your goal or your target job, it doesn't happen overnight. There are steps and there are people around that goal that you can work through to earn that credibility, to earn that relationship. And to your point, all those people, you were exposed to all those people, they all vouched for you, and then you grew within the sports area because of that. So I think that's great advice. I think a lot of times today, people expect to graduate and then get the perfect dream job right out of college. And there's a lot of legwork that happens between graduating and getting, and I would argue there is no perfect job, but getting the job that, is your target goal. And to your point, it wasn't your target job that you took. It was an internship in an agency, but that allowed you to grow in so many different ways that you probably didn't know about, right? Or you didn't expect to learn.
100%. 100%. Well, and
No,
it's
that's an
funny too
awesome story.
because, yeah, when I remember like a lot of the jobs along the way, I really did treat every job like I gave 100% in everything that I did. And
Yeah.
even when I was being a hostess, like I ended up meeting individuals with, high levels of influence and power within the sports industry. And by treating them with the same level of respect, I would treat someone that I work with. I ended up building really good relationships. Same thing when I was an intern and I was organizing tickets and mailing out like hundreds of FedEx packages a week. Like I did everything with the same level of detail. And I can't express enough to anyone who is in an internship that what you do at the start of your career matters so much because, the feedback that people gave people who are looking to, or like my employers gave to the people who are looking to hire me was she's insanely detail oriented. She always has a
Mm,
positive attitude, even when she's like slugging hundreds of
stress. Yeah.
tickets and
Yeah.
so I think it really is important the attitude that you portray as well and not let what's happening outside of your world or whatever sort of maybe financial troubles you're going through or things that you're dealing with
Yeah.
at home impact your day to day because people see that and it's hard. It's not easy to do, but I really do think it makes a massive impact on how you show up every single day and the kind of smile that you put on your face even when
Mhm.
it's sometimes hard.
Yeah, you're making that company or that leader's job a little bit easier, right? Because they're one less thing they have to worry about and they feel like they can take care of it. with someone that always has that positive attitude, that follow through, and that detail. And that now, as it gets busier and busier, as you're a leader and in a company, that's more and more important to find those kind of people. So I think that's great advice. So maybe walk us through, you have your agency job. What came next? What happened after that job, and why did it come next?
Yeah, so after about 4 years in that role, I'm gonna continue to get promoted. I still absolutely loved every moment of it, but there was a lot of travel. I was,
Mhm.
traveling all up and down the East Coast, spending days in hotels. It was great because I was single, and so I didn't have to worry about, another human in my life at that time. So it was the perfect time for me to really just explore and,
Yep.
be out and about. But the one thing that I did realize was that I was getting a little bit exhausted pretty early on. And so I went to my alma mater. They had a bunch of alumni events. And to this day, I always recommend tapping into your alumni network because you just
Mm.
never know what can come from it. And one person at the time was hiring for a head of graduate admissions for the School of Sport, Tourism, and Hospitality, which was the school I graduated from, and had asked if I was interested in, applying for the role. I was like, I don't know anything about graduate admissions. I don't know anything about, like, I didn't even know what test you took to get your master's or your MBA, which now I know is a GRE or GMAT. And at the time I was like, why would you want to hire me? And they're like,
Right.
because you love this school. You talk about this school. You went through the program. You know,
Mm.
graduated second in your class. Like, you love this. Like, this is everything. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. So completely pivoted out of sports and essentially spent 4 years after that helping people figure out what it is they want to do with their career, admitting them into graduate school, helping people pivot, because if they didn't want to go in one career path or they went down one career path for a while and realized like this isn't for me, I helped them, pursue a degree in a field that would allow them to then maybe make that transfer or pivot into a new industry. So once again, all kind of ties back to psychology and
Psychology, yep.
being able to work with people and pick their brains on what it is they're interested in. So I did do that for 4 years, and I'm not lying. Like, I think maybe my second month, I told my boss, like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be back in sports, but I was good at it. And so I just kept
Yeah.
rolling with the punches, and I knew I wanted to be a manager one day. And so every time I was ready to leave, they're like, why don't you, we're going to give you a team now. Why don't you like try this out? It'll at least help build your resume for when you
Mm.
want a role that you're managing a team. So I literally just took advantage of every moment I had in that role, even though I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do with my career, because it was helping me grow skills that I needed for the job that I
Yep.
wanted. And so that was more important to me at the time.
Did you get the same energy? How did you know that wasn't the job for you? Like, did you have a different level of energy that you received in that role? Like, how did you know this you had to move on back to sports?
I just missed it. Like, there was
Mm.
something inside of me that was like longing to go back. It was more hours, it was crazier work, but every single day I just missed, like, impacting communities and fans, and while I was impacting people on the individual level, it's not what drove me to wake up every day, and so there was a lot of benefits that came out of the role I was in higher education. I was really good at it, so that was fun. Like, I was kind of riding the high of, this is, like, an exciting career that is allowing me to build skills that I never thought I would have. I would have to speak in front of hundreds of people when I would, speak at open houses. So it was really cool because I was
Yep.
learning so many things about myself that I didn't know before. But at the same time, I knew that that wasn't my end goal.
And that's important for people to hear. It may not be the job that you ultimately want to be at, but to make sure along the way you're picking up the different skills that you're going to need for that job. I mean, that just makes you better when you get to the job that you want, and it makes you more willing to be hired. So, I think someone said on my previous podcast, like, there's no moment that's ever wasted. And if it's a bad opportunity or a good opportunity, you're still learning something from that opportunity, from that experience, and to pick it up and take it with you onto your next job or your next, career path. So what happened after you were at the being at the college graduate and admissions? What came after that?
Yeah, so about a year left in my kind of span being there, I started researching jobs that I might want to do. I started doing, I'm not lying, like dozens of informational interviews. I would reach out to someone that I had maybe a mutual connection with, or I saw someone had a connection with, and I just asked, like, hey, I'm not looking for a job switch right now, but I want to just pick your brain on your career path. It's something I might be interested in. And for the, dozen plus people that opened up their door for me, it was really exciting to learn about, what they were doing. And I asked them, like, please tell me the good, the bad, the ugly. Like, I want to know what you don't like about the role that you're in, what you love about the role that you're in. And sometimes I found that what someone hated was actually something that I
Mm,
probably would love,
mm,
and some things that people loved. So it was exciting to like ask people, like, and that's why I'm not a huge fan of the word authentic because I feel like it's overused
yep,
now, but I really did ask people, like, be authentic, like, share with me
yep.
genuinely what you're feeling and how you like your role, and it allowed me to wean out, like, okay, agency side is no longer the space for me, and I knew, okay, let me try the brand side, so that's essentially, like, working for a major brand that partners with sports teams. So, talked to a bunch of people there, realized, like, I don't think that's for me. When I started talking to people who worked on the team side, I was like, "Okay, this is the path I wanna go down." I knew it would require insane amount of work and effort and long hours, but everything that I learned, that was the path. So I started studying the skills that I needed in order to get a role like that one day. And I literally just started finding ways within my current job to bolster my resume to match what I wanted to do. And finally, when I felt, okay, I'm ready, like I'm ready to make the move, I tapped into my network, reached out to people, and applied for a few jobs, and then landed the role at the Philadelphia Union, the Major League Soccer team in Philadelphia. And like the moment I got there, I was like, yep, I'm back. This is what I was supposed to
Oh,
do.
that's awesome.
Yep. And it's so fun. But
That's
it was a lot
awesome.
of
So
work.
then
Like that was like 2 years in the planning of researching, studying. Like I did not just wake up one day and start applying and hope for the best. I
yeah,
really did put a lot of thought into how I was going to get there and how I wanted to present myself when I did.
and how did you get that opportunity at that soccer team? Was there someone that you knew there? Was there a position you just applied for? Or was it organic, or how did you get that role?
Randomly saw it posted online, applied, and then once I did apply and realized I had a few people in common in our network on LinkedIn, I connected with, it was actually one of my professors at the time who, or like professor that I worked with at the university, who had a relationship with them, who then just gave the extra call and said, like, I don't know where you're at in the process, but this person's
Awesome.
awesome. So I firmly am a big believer in tapping into your network. I think the relationships that you build when you don't want something are the strongest relationships, and so to
Agreed.
be able to lean on them when you need them, and being sparing with how you utilize your
Yep.
relationships and asks really paid off at that moment.
Yeah, I say all the time, it's not what you know often, it's who you know. And it's just, I mean, there's so much competition out there today, and everyone is pretty much on an equal playing ground just because of the way just college and internships have heightened. So use your network. If you don't have
Mhm.
one, reach out and create one. And people are always like, well, I don't want to bother that person. Trust me, when you get to a certain point of your
Yep.
career or your age, you want to help, right? You want to mentor, you want to coach, you want to give back, especially to help your industry. Like people are like, you always take so much time teaching people contracting and negotiation. I go, because I'm creating my bench for
Yep.
healthcare because people have to eventually take this over, right? This has to be a skill set that this has to continue. So people want to help. So don't be fearful to reach out. And even if it's someone on LinkedIn that you don't know, what's the worst thing that can happen? They can't respond or they say no,
Yeah.
right? But you have to take that risk.
No, 100%. It's funny, I always go the one step further on that quote by saying, like, it's not what you know, it's who you know, but it's also who knows you. I notice oftentimes people, a million people, you feel like you've got a big network, but if they don't know your name when you
That's
put
right.
them down as a reference, then it really doesn't mean as much. So I always kind of go back to that piece of it all where, it's not just who you know, but it's who knows you. So make sure that when you have conversations and when you're engaging with people that you're really taking the time to get to know them so that they remember you moving forward.
Agreed. And what would be some things that you would suggest for to make someone, if they're reaching out, meeting someone for the first time as an informal discussion or informational discussion? What do you suggest they highlight so that person, that leader can remember them or can differentiate them and get to know them personally?
Yeah, I noticed the ones, at least what resonates for me really well, especially when people are reaching out, is when they take the time to get to know my background and convey that when they're sharing it by saying, hey, I notice you're a female in a role that I'm looking to get into. I saw your journey a lot of people that end up reaching out to me are people who have changed career paths because I was able to leave the sports industry and get back in. So a lot of people who are looking to do a similar, path or on a similar journey will reach out. And I always find that it resonates well with me when I notice that they spent time doing the research. It didn't feel like a cold outreach. It felt like they were intentional in selecting me. And so I think if you can make someone feel like there's a reason why you're reaching out to them because whether it's you admire their career path, whether it's a career path you want to get into, it really does make people feel special. And when someone feels special, they want to talk to you. So,
It's making that connection, right? It's
yes,
taking the extra time to get to learn about them. If they're taking the time to get to meet you, do the research. Don't waste that
yes,
I always say, don't waste that person's
yes.
time. Come prepared, come with questions that you want to know, and make that to your point, not authentic, but also make it a connection. Make something that they're valuable questions, not just the general questions that you haven't put any time into it. So I think that's important in terms of just showing up and preparing and making sure, that 30 minutes is worth their while just as much as worth your own while.
Absolutely. And I also believe in the power of the follow through after and making sure that
Hmm.
if someone took time to meet with you, that you send them a thank you note. And same thing, you make it feel personal. You actually talk about some of the things that you discussed in your thank you. And what I've actually come to love recently is there are a few people that I've talked to. Maybe they reached out on LinkedIn and and then next thing you know, they reach out like a couple months later and give me an update on where they're at in their career
Yes.
and have just stayed in touch. And those are the names I remember the most. Those are the people that I vouch for the most. So I think it's really cool, not just that thank you right after, but also the continue follow up of, hey, not needing anything, just want to give you an update on my life. Like I'm at this place now. I know we talked about it was something important to me. Really wanted to thank you for your advice. It helped me get X, Y, and Z. I think that's really cool and special.
The follow-up and the thank you is a tactic that I feel has been lost recently over the past few years, and I've have large teams, and I did a ton of interviewing after the couple years after just restructuring teams, and the lack of follow-up and thank you notes was probably 50% of the most qualified candidates that
Wow.
I probably spoke to, and I was recently on a panel that I was talking about, the characteristics I look for when I hire, and some people asked, "What do you do to weed people out?" Or what are like the absolute no's, they're out. I go, if that person doesn't follow up within 48 hours with a thank you email if it's too general, I don't want it. Like, give me a couple nuggets we talked about in our
Yep.
conversation. But I go, if they don't send that thank you, I go, they're out. I don't care what resume they needed because if they can't follow up on something so simple, those characteristics of what they can do within a team or within a company, for me, it's just a non-negotiable. So I think take the extra time. It means a ton to that hiring leader because they spent time
Yep.
with you on a call and give them, just it's that respect, just thank them for their time.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's absolutely, it stands true to how I believe. I even go sometimes as far as doing a handwritten letter, if it makes sense. I
Hmm.
get mail still, and it's my favorite thing. Like, who gets mail anymore? So every once in a while, like people I've mentored will send me a letter, and it
That's
brings me
awesome.
so much joy to receive a letter when all I receive is emails all day. So,
Well, yeah, because they had to get an envelope, they had to buy a
yes.
stamp, right? They had to put it in the mailbox, and we do have to keep the US Postal Service, alive, so we should mail a letter every now and then.
I love it.
So take us from your Philadelphia role, in the soccer team, and what was next for you after that? What was the next career transition?
Yeah. So I honestly was so obsessed with my job at the Philadelphia Union. I never thought I would leave. When I became vice president, that was like my goal. I was like, I want to be a vice president. And so when I hit that milestone, it was really, really cool for myself, my career, especially being a female in a male dominated industry to have a title like that. I was one of only three vice president females in the Philadelphia Union organization amongst dozens of men. So it was something that I was not only really proud of, but it was something that I genuinely enjoyed and loved and felt I was really good at. So, a part of my job at the time was taking partners on the team plane, which was super fun, and taking them to different cities where the team would play. And one of the cities we went to was San Jose. and I took a group of partners on a trip. And on my journey, I had reached out to someone at Levi's Stadium, which is the stadium I now work at, to ask if someone could help give me a tour and help tour my partners around because I wanted them to see different stadiums, how different
Hmm.
signage looks in different arenas. So someone got connected to another person, that person was unavailable. I got connected to another person, that person was unavailable. Like it was like vacation time, like everyone was gone. And then the last person that said, "Hey, I'll give her and her partners a tour," was my now boss.
Oh, no
So
way.
he had toured me and all my partners around. And the whole time, like, I am working on my partners. I'm like, do you see this signage? We could do this in our stadium. Like, this is so every time my now boss would talk and explain something, I would try to relate it back to like how
Ah,
they can utilize that. So I think him watching me kind of like work my partners and do my job was kind of a benefit because you're always interviewing. Like no matter
yep.
where you're at, if you are in a public setting, you just always have to be on because you just never know who's paying attention. And you know, I'm going to say 6 months after that, the role for my current role opened up and we had connected on LinkedIn. And I was like, I mean, I'd love to learn more because I did fall in love with San Jose when I came. It's like, but I really, really love my job right now and I don't really want to go anywhere. And he's like, well, let me just tell you a little bit about it. So he kind of talked me through the role. And I was like, this feels like a dream. But I just bought a house in Pennsylvania. We were
Oh,
like
wow.
ready to set down roots, me and my husband. And so it was really funny when life happens. Sometimes you
Yep.
just, it's
Go
just
with it.
unexpected. And I'm pretty sure, every strong human breaks down every once in a while. And I'm pretty sure I cried for like 3 weeks and I got the offer of like, what do I do? Like, is this the right
Ugh.
decision? It was horrifying, like uprooting
Oh,
my life, bringing someone along with
across
me
the country, across the
across the
country.
country. My whole family is in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania area. So it was horrifying, but I really do believe like if something does not scare
Yep.
you to death, like
Yep.
it's not worth it. And so I was like, you know what? Like, what is the worst that can happen? I go out there and I hate it and I move back. Like, I'm just going to do it. And I had such great support systems around me that when I told them that I could work for the NFL, which was kind of like my dream was to work for the NFL, they were like, "I don't even know why you're asking me. Like, why is this even a question?" They're like, "Who cares if you love your current job? You're gonna love this one even more." So, ended up making the leap, love every moment of it. I've been exposed to so much. I'm literally about to work the USA men's soccer game when they come
Oh,
to
that's
our
awesome.
stadium on Wednesday. I'm like, sometimes I have to pinch myself, but I also
Yeah.
know that if I wouldn't have gotten outside of my comfort zone, took immense risks, spoke up when I was in a room with all men multiple times, and when I was scared to, like, I wouldn't be where I am today, so
So let's go there a little bit. Maybe describe a little bit deeper what you do in your role today. And then after that, how you navigate and your roles previous too. It's a male dominated industry. How did you show up when it was a room full of male? Do you think that you were different of how you showed up knowing it was all male? Or do you think if it was more diverse and it was more equal men and women, it would have been different for you? But maybe the first part is tell us a little bit more in detail for someone maybe that's interested in, in the sports world, specifically what you're doing today.
yeah, so I think the one thing that people don't realize about working in sports is that you're doing every function that every business has, but you're doing it within the sports industry. So, we have public relations, accounting, finance, like we have HR, we have all of the same units. And so what I love about my current role is that it allows me to work within sports, but really my primary role is negotiating and working on sports partnerships and fulfilling them. So we have two sides of the corporate partnership world. You have your corporate partnership sales, where you're bringing in new business, generating new revenue for the organization. And then once a deal is struck and the contract is written, it gets passed on to me. And then my team works to fulfill that contract, which is pretty unique of a role in and of itself because you're not just like we don't own any assets as a sponsorship team. Our marketing team has digital assets.
Mm,
Our community relations team has community events. So when we sell something, we're really selling what other people have. And so a lot of what our job is making sure that we're building really strong relationships with every department within my organization to ensure that when we need to collaborate with them on a community program, that they're like excited and ready to help us. When we sell digital assets, we're selling things that make sense for the brand, that make sense for the voice that we're trying to convey as an organization. So a lot of what we do is bringing partnerships to life. That also means we work on all the signage. So if you walk into a venue and you see
Mhm.
a massive partner sign, like my team literally is the one who works with vendors to get that sign up to make sure it's lit properly and perfectly. We are an extension of the brands that we bring on. And so it's really important that we make sure that they're shown in the best light. Another big component of my role is ensuring that just like us as humans, goals from organizations
Yeah.
change. And so it's being really intentional about the relationship that you have with your partners because you have to be able
Mm.
to ask, like, what are your goals this year? Have your goals changed? Is there anything
Yep.
else you're looking for? How do you measure success? What's important to your organization? And being able to just adjust on the fly when an organization says, we have a brand new CMO, everything is different. You need to
Yep.
completely pivot. And how do we best fulfill that without, upsetting a partner? So a lot of what my role is pivoting, building relationships, understanding what's important to partners, and going from there.
That's awesome. And then how do you feel like you've had to navigate that in your current role, being a woman in a male-dominated industry, and maybe just you broaden across your whole career? Did you show up differently? Did you feel like you have to show up differently, or were you just yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I tried to tap into like be yourself as much as possible and that'll shine through, but there were definitely moments or areas where I realized maybe my opportunities weren't as broad as some of the males within the organizations that I worked. I'll give a really specific example that I love to talk about a lot. When I went into one role, I had found out that my boss and a few others were going to a meeting and with an important partner that we had to renew, and I had asked if I could go with them, and they said, "Well, do you golf?" And I said,
Mm.
"No." And they go, "Ooh, it's kind of like a golf meeting." And I was like, "Cool, great. I guess I'm not going then." So, like, I was basically left out of an
Mhm.
opportunity because I didn't do what in the sports industry is like a very male
Yeah.
dominated way to bond and connect and build relationships. And so I was asked by one of my partners to go to a golf tournament with him, and I was, like, honored that I was even asked, and I was like, "I know, but, like, I don't play golf," and he goes, "Oh, who cares? No one really knows how to play golf. Just come, it's a scramble, it's really easy, you kinda lean on the best person, so even if you don't know how to play, it doesn't matter." And it took that person, like, extending
Wow.
the olive branch for me to be like, "Okay, I wanna do this." Fell in love with the sport, which not everyone
Oh, no way.
ended up taking lessons, and I've never been left out of a meeting, and anytime someone goes,
Interesting.
"We have this coming," I'm like, yeah, I know how to golf, so can I can I go? And, even if I didn't though, I'd still probably like, even if I
Yeah.
didn't love it, because I realize I'm not gonna limit myself from opportunities just because I can't do something. Like, you can literally be whoever you wanna be, and in
Agreed.
those moments, I was like, I wanna be a part of those meetings, and so I found a
Good for
way
you.
in. But it's fun because, like I said, you are sometimes limited by certain aspects. I also learned that, like, I could have been a caddy. I could have went along with them. I could have rode on the cart. Like, you don't have to be excluded, and the more you ask questions and the more you probe into the areas where maybe you're not being provided an opportunity as to like why you're not being provided the opportunity,
Right.
the more chance you have to either get involved or realize that maybe that company is not the right one for you because they're just not opening doors for you.
And a lot of times it's not you, right? It's that first person that said to you, "Well, no, you can't come because you don't golf." Where if he had more of an open mind, right? And he was probably, let's be honest, most of the time people say no is because they're either jealous or intimidated of someone, right? So maybe he felt like, no, what is she going to do there? Why would she come? Who's she going to be talking to, right? Or he's unfamiliar with it. So it takes the more of an open mindedness, I think. And that second person who said, yeah, no, you don't have to golf, just come. Right. There was probably more of a collaboration or willingness for him to let you into their circle and not threatened or I don't know. It's just weird how people respond. I mean, I've grown up in a male dominated industry also in healthcare, and it's always interesting. The most hostile or emotional reactions that I get are usually by people that are jealous or threatened, that I'm going to know something different from them or more than them. And I just learned to just kill them with familiarity and kill them with just almost like you have to comfort them. Like you have
Yep.
to respond to make them feel comfortable with you that you're not a threat and you're here to conquer the same goal that you all have. So it's a very interesting dynamic. It's a lot more, I would say, growing up in a career that's male dominated. There's a lot more than just the professional element you're
Yep.
dealing with. There, and from your psychology background and interest, you're always constantly thinking, like, why would they be thinking that? Why would they say that? And you're navigating through a lot of personal and emotional connection, I would say, with men because they put up this front, like you look different, you act different. Why are you here? And you have to connect with them. It's not what you know a lot of times. It's not the knowledge because 9 times out of 10, if you're sitting at that same table with them, you have the same knowledge, you have the
Yep.
same experience, you deserve to be there. But it's allowing them to have this comfort to let them in almost like to let you in to make that impact. And then it opens their mind and it allows them to have a different view of you and what your opportunities could be.
It's funny, when I started out in my career, I felt like I had a lot to prove. Like, I
Mhm.
tried to speak up even when maybe I was like, okay, maybe that was my moment to not to not speak, because I really did feel like I had to prove my worth. And there was a certain switch, and I don't know exactly when it was. I think maybe when I became a manager, because it's when you start really focusing on other
Yep.
people, where I realized, like, if you just show up and if you lead with kindness, if you lead with respect, if you lead, you
Yep.
know, by being your authentic self, like, you really do end up showing to others without having to prove that you belong and that your space is welcome. And I think even as a leader now, I'm always conscious of people in the room who talk a lot.
Yep.
And that's not a bad thing, but I'm also really conscious of, like, okay, there are 5 people who don't ever speak. And
Yep.
so I make sure to call on them, make sure their voice
Yep.
is heard. And I think it is a trait that you need to learn to take, because you're going to at one point go from, I have to prove my worth, I have to show that I'm willing to do anything, to switching over
Yep.
completely and saying, like, I need to be the leader for my team that gives them the opportunity to speak up, to show
Yep.
their worth, to prove their worth. And so I think it is really unique. And I have found that the more I've been open with the males in my field on how I'm feeling or the things
Yep.
that I want to do, the more they let me in. And so I also think, there was a shift in my mind too, where I was like, I have to play sports and I have to do this. And then at
Right.
one point I was like, I don't care. I just want to be able to have fun and be heard. And as long
Yep.
as I feel like I'm getting those opportunities, it doesn't matter what it looks like. But it definitely did take a while for me to mentally get there.
I agree with that. So, throughout your career growth, or even back to your college times where you walked into the college department and asked for volunteer internship, were you ever uncomfortable doing that? Or were you ever feeling a lack of confidence that you couldn't do that? And if you were, what allowed you to overcome that feeling of being uncomfortable or that feeling of I can't do this? Like this is something out of my league. How did you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, the word confidence is such a interesting word, because confidence isn't something that you're just like born with. I feel like confidence is something from within, like it's just genuinely trusting
Mhm.
yourself and your abilities, and it's trusting all the long hours that you put into your education, your career, your trade. It's all the studying. It's just trusting that everything that you've done up until this point in your career led you to make the right decisions when the
Yep.
time comes. And so even when I was incredibly uncomfortable, I knew that no matter what was going to come out of my mouth, that I have prepped and planned enough that I can make the right decisions. I can say the right things. And so I just had to keep telling myself, like, you're smart, you're intelligent, you know exactly what you're doing. And even if it doesn't come off the way that you want right away, like, you're going to eventually get there. So I also learned, like, you can't really move forward if you're not walking or taking steps. And
Yep.
so if I wanted to move forward in my career and if I wanted to make a change, I literally had to physically move and walk in front of the people I needed to get, to know my name, to make sure that people knew who I was. So I think for me, it was a lot of, I knew where I wanted to go, and you can't go somewhere without moving. So,
No, I think that's great advice, and, it's okay to feel uncomfortable too, because that's when you have change usually occurs or it pushes you to do something different, and I always get questions from 20-year-olds graduating like, "Well, how do I get confidence?" I'm like, well, the only person that can give you confidence, ironically, is
Yep.
yourself. So I can't answer that question for you. You got to figure that out. But it's important what you said is it's not like this, it's just a feeling you're creating on your own, but you have to know that knowledge, you have to know the information. You're the one you have to figure out what you need to do to feel confident in that moment to take that next step because no one else is going to give it to you and say, poof, like here's your confidence for the day, right? So it's an interesting word because people constantly look for it, but they don't realize that they're the only ones that can give it to themselves.
Oh, yeah.
So if you to wrap it up with kind of our last question here, building on that, what advice would you give to a college student or a recently graduated student that's looking in to get into the sports arena as a female or a male even, because we do have male listeners, but what would be your biggest advice today, 2026?
Yeah, I guess tying back into kind of my journey and all of the ridiculous jobs that I took, even being a mascot at one point in time, just to make sure I was making money so I can afford the nice outfits that I needed. I think it doesn't matter where you start. I think it
Yep.
matters why you're starting. I think people get caught up in perceptions of, to your point earlier, of we have to land our dream role right from, the start. But I think if you focus on what's important to you, like why you're starting, because you're trying to get to point, A to get you to point B to get you to point C. So, focus less on the where and focus more on the why. I think every step of the way, you got to remember that that next step is the most important thing. And so as long as you're taking steps forward, you're in that role for a reason, and learn as much as you can while you're in every single role, and make sure your voice is heard, because no matter what the role is, there's someone listening, and that person might be the person who's giving you your next job or sharing with someone that they should hire you, because they see your work ethic.
That's great advice. A lot of different suggestions there. And I hope that everyone listening learned from Michelle and her stories. Michelle, it was fascinating, not just with the sports element of everything that you've done, but obviously your comments of doing it in a male dominated world. And that was your dream. That was kind of the area you wanted to go, and you didn't give up on it. So thank you so much for sharing your story and joining the Root to Rising podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been awesome. I'm really, really excited to be able to share my story.
So as a reminder, this is Root to Rising podcast with Christine Hummel with special guest today, Michelle Rosar. And this is a platform created for women to share their experiences and stories for others to listen to, gain confidence, and grow. Until next time.